The House will please come to order. Seems like just 12 hours ago we were here. Welcome, members, to the 9th day of the 66th Wyoming Legislature's budget session. I'd like to invite Reverend Veit to open us in prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Considering all that's going on in the world today, I thought it would be appropriate to offer a collect for the human family. And also, we especially remember Leland Christensen, I know, as we prepare for Saturday, a shining star in our midst. So let us pray. Oh God, you made us in your image. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Break down the walls that separate us, unite us in bonds of love, and work through our struggle to accomplish your purposes on earth. That in your good time, all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Finally, we remember Leland Christensen, who served this state and our nation faithfully for so many years. We thank you for his witness and service to make us a better state and a better people. For it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
So members, we're just going to stay standing for just a moment, and our two pages from the western side of the state are going to sing the national anthem. So I know all the members aren't here, but I think it's an appropriate time to do that while Reverend is here, and we're all getting ready to start our days, the day's work we have ahead of us, that we allow these young gentlemen to sing the national anthem. So, gentlemen, at your leisure.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
All right, so thank you very much, gentlemen. Very nicely done. I hope that kind of gives us a place to start our day, both with prayer, and our Pledge of Allegiance, and of course with that rendition of our national anthem. We're still missing the Revenue Committee, it appears, but let's go ahead and call the roll. We'll leave it open for when they arrive. Call the roll, please.
Convening roll for the 9th day, Thursday, February 24th, 2022. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn, excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
Here.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Worf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Swanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Yin. Nicholas.
Can we go?
Baker.
Yep. We'll excuse Gray, Hallinan, Harshman, Henderson, Roscoe, Sweeney as they're part of the, actually here, just a moment.
Gray.
We'll just give them just a moment. They're all walking in the door. Or not. All right, so we're going to excuse Hallinan, Harshman, Henderson, Roscoe, Sweeney, as they will be here, but they're still finishing up some work, committee work.
Mr. Speaker, 54 present, 6 excused.
Thank you. I just say they might have been working on the most important bill of the 2 bills I have this year. So I'll give them that little bit of slack. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 23rd, 2022 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Haroldson and Provenza.
Thank you. Messages from the Senate.
Message 133. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on 3rd reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 23, Nursing Home Administrators. Ayes 29, excused 1. Message 134. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on 3rd reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 24, Pharmacist and Pharmacy Technicians Practice. Ayes 29, excused 1. Message 135. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 101, Ephedrine and Naxaline Administration Authority. Ayes 29, excused 1. Message 136. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 103, Education, Limitations on Teaching Critical Race Theory 2. Ayes 25, noes 4, excused 1. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
With that order of business on Senate files on first reading, first bill for our consideration is Senate File 23.
Senate File 23, sponsored by Labor.
First reading of the bill.
Nursing Home Administrators.
Senate File 23 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, Social Services. Next file, 24.
Senate File 24, sponsored by Labor.
First reading of the bill.
Pharmacist and Pharmacy Technician Practice.
Senate File 24 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, Social Services. Senate File 101.
Senate File 101, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss.
First reading of the bill.
Ephedrine and Naxaline Administration Authority.
Senate File 101 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor Health. So with that, members, I think every committee should now have Senate files before them. Hopefully that'll keep you busy for the remainder of this week. And then we'll start cranking out bills as soon as we start getting them. And most, I think, of the bills we'll be getting now, well, there'll be quite a few personal bills as we come in. I think there was only one so far. So anyway, so there's very few more Senate files available to us, but we'll have them probably by tomorrow or certainly Monday. All right. Reports from standing committees.
House Bill 5, sponsored by Agriculture. Wild Horse and Borough Management, an act relating to land management. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 5, Wild Horse and Borough Management, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Kenner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 91, sponsored by Representative Greer. County Officers' Salaries, an act relating to counties. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 91, County Officers' Salaries, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Kenner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 72, sponsored by Representative Summers. Hunting License Application Funds, an act relating to game and fish. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 72, Hunting License Application Funds, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Flitner, Knapp, Newsom, Sweeney, Williams, Winter. Noes, Representatives Haroldson and Jennings. Representatives Flitner, Chairman. House Bill 89, sponsored by Representative Greer, Monthly Ad Valorem Tax Revisions Enforcement, an act relating to mineral production. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred House Bill 89, Monthly Ad Valorem Tax Revisions Enforcement. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Baer, Burkhart, Duncan, Ayer, Greer, Heiner, Sherwood, Western. Noes, Representative Gray. Representative Greer, Chairman. House Bill 123, sponsored by Representative Barlow. Mine Reclamation Disposal of Minerals or Materials, an act relating to environmental quality. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred House Bill 123, Mine Reclamation Disposal of Materials. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Baer, Burkhart, Duncan, Ayer, Gray, Greer, Heiner, Sherwood, Western. Representative Greer, Chairman. House Bill 141, sponsored by Representative Harrelson. Coal-fired facility closures, litigation funding amendments. An act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals and Business and Economic Development, to whom was referred House Bill 141, coal-fired facility closures, litigation funding amendments. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Baer, Burkhart, Duncan, Ayer, Gray, Greer, Heiner, Western. Noes, Representative Sherwood. Representative Greer, Chairman. House Bill 92, sponsored by Representative Rodriguez Williams. Abortion prohibition, Supreme Court decision. An act relating to abortion. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 92, abortion prohibition, Supreme Court decisions. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Flitner, Hallinan, Ottman, Romero Martinez, Stivar, Wharf, Wilson. Noes, Representatives Connolly, LeBeau. Representative Wilson, Chairman.
All right, members, we're at that order of business of bills on second reading. First bill for our consideration is House Bill 3.
House Bill 3, sponsored by Agriculture. State land leases, an act relating to state lands.
There is an amendment. Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 3. I wanted to mention something to kind of clarify things, questions that were asked. There are a couple of terms in the bill that become confusing. One is preferred right and the other is preference. The word preference is used in the terminology that applies to vacant lands, which this bill is about. The preferred right is on leased lands as they're renewed. And I would like to turn the explanation of the amendment over to my colleague from up north.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Craigo, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rise in support of the amendment. I'll try to give a quick explanation of what we were trying to do here. When we discussed this bill last, the good chairman of Minerals had some questions regarding how this would apply. Are we guaranteeing the preference to the old ranching families of Wyoming? So we went back, looked at the language a little bit, and I think we got that cleared up. And so really what we did, if you look on page 2 of the bill, the main changes in the amendment are down on lines 15 through 23. And in that language, the language appeared to give the right to the State Lands Board to determine whether or not the preference was in the best interest or even should apply when leasing these vacant state lands. And I don't think that was the intent. And that goes directly to what the chairman of Minerals was talking about. So we took that language out and just says the preference will apply. And then we left in all the new language regarding how we deal with the situation where you have more than one preference or when there's a competing non-preference applying for the vacant land as well. And so it's pretty simple. It's a lot of changes on paper, but in actuality, the changes in the bill are pretty simple, and it just makes it very clear how the preference applies and to whom it applies. And I stand for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any members for first time? First time on the amendment? First time on the amendment? First time, second time? Seeing none. Members, we are voting on second reading, amendment number 1, House Bill 3. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. House Bill 3, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I would move the third reading consent list consisting of the following bills: House Bill 6, House Bill 52, and House Joint Resolution 1.
So 52 has been removed from the list. It has an amendment now. So what is the list again? House Bill 6 and House Joint 1?
Mr. Speaker, so it would be House Bill 6 and House Joint 1.
Anyone want any of those bills removed from the consent list? Because if we do, we're just going to take them all up individually. You got a 50-50. Any one of those removed? Any of those removed? All right, seeing none. Reading clerk, please read the bills on the consent list.
House Bill 6, sponsored by Select Water, ARPA funds for water and wastewater projects. An act relating to water and wastewater projects being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Joint Resolution 1, sponsored by Judiciary, Supreme Court Justices and District Judges' Retirement. A joint resolution proposing to amend the Wyoming Constitution by amending the retirement age requirements for Wyoming Supreme Court Justices and District Court Judges, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
So members, I'll remind you that this is a consent list. The standard protocol is you vote aye, and then the chief clerk gives you an opportunity to change your vote individually. The first one is a House bill, requires a majority vote. The second, to be successful, requires a 2/3 vote as a amendment to the Constitution. So with that, chief clerk, please call the roll on the consent list.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Ayer. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller.
Aye.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
Aye.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Tybar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Worf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker, we have 59 aye, 1 excused. As for House Bill 6, are there any changes? Gray, aye to no. Burt, aye to no. Worf, aye to no. Stybar, aye to no. Bear, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Fortner, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 52 aye, 7 no, 1 excused. And as for House Joint Resolution 1, are there any changes? Gray, aye to no. Worf, aye to no. Larson Dan, aye to no. Fortner, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 54 aye, 5 no, 1 excused.
By your affirmative vote, a majority of the members, House Bill 6 has passed the House. By your affirmative vote of 2/3 of the members, House Joint Resolution 1 has passed the House. We're now at that order of business of bills on third reading, final passage, regular list. First bill for our consideration is House Bill 2.
House Bill 2, sponsored by Select Water. Disposition of water rights, an act relating to the subdivision of land and water rights being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We do have an amendment. Representative Larson, Dan.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill number 2. After a little discussion with our county the other night, there was a little anxiety about the wording on this in this area. So we're just deleting application 4A in front of subdivision permit in 2 different places. So that's the bill or the amendment, and I'd ask for your aye vote.
Any other member first time? Members first time. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, this amendment strengthens the bill. I encourage an aye vote. Call for a question.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none. Members were voting on third reading, amendment number 1, House Bill 2. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment is adopted. House Bill 2, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn excused, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller,
Aye.
O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood,
Aye.
Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 excused.
By having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 2 has passed the House. So members, we are expecting an amendment on House Bill 16. House Bill 16. Oh, it has arrived. It is a delete the enacting clause amendment. So if you want to pull it up on your computer to see it, otherwise you probably know what it's about. So we're at that order of business of House Bill 16. Reading clerk.
House Bill 16, sponsored by Transportation. Military Assistance Trust Fund, authorized uses, an act relating to defense forces and affairs being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Thank you. We do have an amendment. Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to move Amendment 3 to House Bill 16, and we'll draw it at the appropriate time. This is taking funds for that was set aside for emergencies for troops when they were deployed. Now they want to use them for daycare. That is an individual responsibility. And we had this conversation yesterday about picking out different departments over other departments for pay raises. This is the same thing. you're taking single parents and dual military parents and paying for their daycare during drill weekends and not giving compensation to anybody else. It's the same thing. You know, it's a personal responsibility. Army regulation, AR 600-20, the command policy says if you're a single parent or dual military, you have to have a family care plan if you deploy. So it's a personal responsibility, and I request a no vote on this bill.
Thank you. Any other members? Any other members? Any other members first time? Representative McGuire, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so just with regard to general discussion about the bill. So originally, when the legislature set these funds aside, they set aside $5 million, and it was an inviolate fund. So the $5 million are there. Any interest that accrues can be used again to assist with actively deployed individuals in the state of Wyoming. And as I mentioned before, those funds have been used for really good things. One member of the family is deployed. There was a big hailstorm here in Cheyenne, hole in the roof. They took some of those funds and they fixed the roof while the other member of the family was gone. Same thing, emergency medical, emergency travel. And these funds have been very carefully used. In fact, so carefully that the fund has grown by an additional $2.2 million over the years. It's not like they're taking that money and spending every penny that comes up. They have been very clear. They've set up rules. An application has to be made. It's reviewed. They have internal policies and procedures. And so the request is that with that excess money that they have, right now there is a real and legitimate issue with regard to our Guard men and women around the state when they are coming for drill weekends. And that is not active deployment. That is inactive activity. And so the question that they have is, hey, can we take some of these excess funds and with good discretion, and you can look at the fiscal note, they're talking about $136,000. Can we take some of these funds in limited circumstances? Again, they stress this is not just a big, massive giveaway. In certain situations where somebody has got problems, they want to get to the drill weekend. Anybody who's had kids that has had to deal with daycare, you understand that on the weekend, it's a big challenge to find somebody to take care of kids. And we have, as society has changed, we have a lot of single parents. And so there's a window in their lives when it's really difficult to take care of those kids. They want to continue their service. They want to continue their career. And so the ask for this bill is in limited circumstances, hey, can we help some of these people, help them continue with their career? They want to continue with their career. Let's get them over this, I don't know if I want to say rough patch or challenging time, to the point where their kids are more independent and they can continue on with their career. So with all due respect, again, I understand personal responsibility and everything else. This is just a request from the general and from his staff to allow them to have some discretion to help these people out. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Duncan, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, a lot of people don't realize that your weekend warriors, people who go drill on the weekends, these are the ones that are actively deployed multiple times. It's not necessarily our active duty that are being sent over. It is our Guard members that keep being sent over. I know my husband, for one, was deployed 2 times for 9 months at a time. Plus, then when he's home, he spent 22 years in the Air National Guard. And on the weekends, once a month, he was down here in Cheyenne. So there are people who actually have to drill farther away than just their back door, their backyard. There's people who actually have to travel across the state. So we need to remember that this isn't just a regular once a month kind of responsibility. These guys are the ones, and women are the ones that are actually on multiple rotations, multiple times in war and out of war, and they're going across different nations. So that's what's really at stake here, is you've got families being left at home to care for their kids, or, you know, 2 Guard members gone, and they have kids and others and responsibilities to have to be taken care of. It's a huge, huge responsibility.
Thank you. Representative LeBeau, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just rise in opposition to this amendment. We look at the times that we're in, and everybody's been struggling, also because of the pandemic as well. And these men and women lay their lives on the line for our freedoms. And the way I read the bill is it's a last resort. And I understand that it's a personal responsibility, but everybody's been suffering. Everybody's been suffering with the economy, with jobs, with filling jobs. We've been talking about that for quite a bit on those issues yesterday. And so I just rise in opposition. We need to support our military parents and families. Thank you.
Any other member, first time? Representative Romero Martinez, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I like this amendment, or at least I like the conversation that it's opening up with this amendment. And I just wanted to address my support of this conversation or this amendment, because if there's money earmarked for A or B, it should be used for A or B. If they're requesting it to be discretionary because it could be put to good use, which it sounds like, at least from the presentation given, that it is, the hole in the roof or whatever. And then there was the concept of the difficulty that it is for an individual Guard member to get somewhere, get to work basically, because they're farther away. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the majority of the people that are serving in the Wyoming Air National Guard, excuse me, it was mentioned before and I subtract that, I apologize, I won't say a proper name again, but in the Guard, of which is our units, either branch, are from out of state. And how much does that cost us? We get money to go for a cause, we're trying to build Wyoming, and we're really just infusing Wyoming with members from outside of the state. Two things that rang in my mind after yesterday's conversation, long conversation. A, we take care of our own. I can give you a million situations where we don't. And B, we're using our money responsibly. I appreciate the AFI code that was mentioned in regards to personal responsibility. But I would say a lot of these rules are vague. Nobody knows what they are. As a prior service member myself, I could tell you that they've been arduous, vague, arbitrary. And I would really like the discussion to continue in looking at recidivism rates for the national defenders of our local part-time warriors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Chairman Nicklin, first time.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the amendment and support of the bill unless things have changed. So for a while, I had the honor of serving on this committee that heard this bill. And One of the things I'm aware of the whole time I was there were a shortage of guardsmen. They had positions to fill and what have you. The pay is a federal pay, and they have agreements to take care of their families, but there's no reason why we can't provide benefits that'll keep these people in our guard and attract others to it. So I would urge a no vote on the amendment and I vote on the bill.
Thank you. Representative O'Hearn, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Guard did a survey, and the top reason for getting out of the Guard is they had the economics of taking care of their children. And one of the things that the Guard figured out was the best way to keep the retention and keep more soldiers in the Wyoming Army Guard was to offer this benefit. I stand in opposition to the amendment.
Thank you. Any other members, first time? First time, second time to the sponsor, Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I've been active duty, I've been in the Guard. I had to travel from Wyoming to Utah when I was with the 19th for the 91st Division. It was my responsibility. All right, active duty, I had a family care plan because I had to have it. So if I deployed, they knew, the command knew where my kids would be and that they were taken care of. All right, I think that we're just no on the bill. Oh, one other thing, Mr. Chairman. I had a conversation with the G1 Sergeant Major, the Admin Sergeant Major for the state to the west, east of us, or west of us, is Guard. They tried this, and it was a very bad failure. And you're looking at the valley there, over there in the salt area, that this failed. So I withdraw my amendment and vote no.
Thank you. House Bill 16, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Ayer. Flittner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller.
Aye.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
Aye.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Swanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 39 aye, 20 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 16 has passed the House. Representative O'Hearn,
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor.
please proceed.
We have the best doctor in the state of Wyoming here with us today, Dr. Tom Radozovich. Come on up, Dr. Tom.
Welcome, Dr. Radosevich. Thank you for being here. Oh, Representative Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to recognize our sheriff from Natrona County, John Harlan, has joined us today. Welcome, Sheriff. And with him is our undersheriff, Bart Olson.
Welcome, gentlemen. I know a lot of your colleagues are here, and I'm sure there'll be other introductions as the day goes on. Welcome. That might be Representative Washut's escort home. All right. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 17.
House Bill 17, sponsored by Transportation, Veterans Facilities surrounded by grazing, an act relating to state lands, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
House Bill 17, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn excused, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller,
Aye.
O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood.
Aye.
Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Sweeney, Walters, Washut, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer, Mr. Speaker, Sweeney. Closing vote, are there any changes? Burt? Aye to no. Andrew? Andrew? Closing vote, are there any changes? Closing vote, the vote is closed. 58 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 17, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 17 has passed the House. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 47. Reading clerk.
House Bill 47, sponsored by Minerals, Local Impact Assistance Payments, an act relating to impact assistance payments, be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
So members, there is an amendment. I'm going to step away from the chair. Representative McGuire is going to be the chairman. Representative Stith, for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, members, I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 47 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, what this fixes a problem with the bill. Right now, the stair step for impact assistance payments is 2.25 and then 2 and then 1.5. And just to tell you things you already know, big picture here is when a developer comes in, does a big project, for the 4 cents of state sales tax, the state share is 69% of that, or 2.76 cents. Our current law allows for impact assistance for these larger projects governed by the Industrial Siting Council, allows for impact assistance payments up to 2.76 cents of that 4 cents, so the entire state share. This bill cuts that back. And the way it cuts it back, as you know, right now is that if your project is less than 350 million, the local impact assistance is 2.25 cents. If it's above 350 but less than $850 million, it's 2 cents. And then in the current draft, above $850 million, your impact assistance to the counties and cities drops down to 1.5 cents. So you already know that. What this does, the problem that the current draft has is that it creates a big stair step at $850 million because it drops from 2 cents all the way down to 1.5. And what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is it creates a big motivational dead zone, for projects between $850 million and $1.13 billion, okay? Because if you're the local county, you are better off for the project to be worth $849 million than you are if it's worth $1 billion. And that's weird, and it's irrational, and it's wrong. Why is that? Why does that happen? Because if the project is $849 million, the counties get 2% of that. That is $16.9 million, almost call it 17, right? But if it's $1 billion project, you don't get $17 million, you get $15 million, because for $1 billion project, you get 1.5%. 1.5% of 1 billion is 15 million. So we have this dramatic dead zone where local county commissioners, when they're presented with a project worth $1 billion, they now have a financial incentive to say, no, company, don't do that. Build a smaller project. Build an $849 million project. Don't build the $1 billion project. If you had some $150 million ammonia plant expansion that you were going to do that was going to create a bunch of jobs, don't do that. We don't want that because we're going to get less money if you build a bigger project. This motivational dead zone is really large because of this huge stair step. This dead zone is $283 million. The entire space between 850 and $1.13 billion is just a no man's land that no one is going to want. That's irrational. So what does this amendment do? It doesn't solve the problem, but it does mitigate it. It does reduce the problem so that instead of having the big stair step from 2 cents to 1.5 cents, the amendment makes it 2 cents to 1.75 cents. I think that's fair. That's certainly good for my county. It's good for counties around my county. It's good for the state. It's good for America. Vote aye.
Thank you for your first time, Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I still, even though it's good for America, I still going to ask you to vote no on the amendment because I'm not so sure. The motivational dead zone is much like the Easter Bunny, I think. There's not a county that would reject $1 billion project because of this. Remember, folks, a couple of things, and the gentleman that worked on this, I'm sure will speak to this as well, but you know, I follow the logic, I just don't believe the logic. But I appreciate it, and I am sincere in saying so. The simple fact is these are unmitigated damages, okay? This bill has been around for quite some time and is in essence passed both houses and ran out of time each time. And so we took it up as an interim topic because the last time it went to our committee, we started getting random, and I don't know if they were random, but they were just cuts in a series of reactionary moves. And so bringing this up as an interim topic, we looked at the numbers. The two gentlemen, legislators that worked on this, worked with the counties. There are some counties along the I-80 corridor that don't like this bill, and I understand the reason why, because they're the ones that have used this probably the most. But the simple fact is what we're doing is we're coming in with unmitigated damages, okay? And we're reimbursing those as the state. So this year, a lot of money in the budget. But in the prior years, we're looking at how do we cut down spending out of the general fund. And this is one of the things that was looked at. And I just want to say, this was given a great deal of consideration, great deal of discussion in our committees. We had the numbers in front of us. And I felt as if, as the chairman of the committee, that the two legislators that worked on that, one was a committee member, one was a member of the Appropriations Committee, worked with the executive director of the association that works with our counties. And they're the ones that came up with this stair step. And the motivational dead zone and the Easter Bunny were never mentioned at all during this process. So with that, I just say, vote no on the amendment. Always support America.
Thank you, Chairman Greer. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I, the good chairman of Minerals really did cover most points that I would talk about, but just would like to reiterate this motivational dead zone, as we want to call it, was created through the effort by the association that works with the county. Those were their numbers. And they're the ones that moved it from 850 up there. We collaborated and frankly conceded to just about every request on the tiers that they made. And so we felt very comfortable as we moved this forward, going to this tiered system, that we were meeting the needs that would allow counties to be funded for unmitigated damages ahead and during the development of these projects. And so I love the presenter of this this amendment. He's a great guy. I just think he's wrong on this, and I'd ask you to vote this amendment down and to support the bill.
Thank you, Representative Larson. Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the bringer of this amendment. He's looking after his county, and I appreciate his efforts there in the land of the sweet water. But we talk about hypotheticals. We talked about this a couple of days ago. The hypothetical maximum, and that's what he's talking about, is the hypothetical maximum award that could be given for these large projects. That is hypothetical. We need to look back. For proper economics, we do a look back economic. So looking back in 2020, we didn't have any projects of that size, of 850 million or larger. I had to go back to 2019 to find a couple of projects. There were two projects in 2019. One was a transmission project, and the award given by the council. Now remember, there's 7 members of this council that decides the amount of that award. And that ceiling that the good representative is talking about, hypothetically, that's the top. But the actual awards are usually lower than that. And this large project back in 2019, the council awarded it was less than 1%. So the maximum was 2.76, but they awarded less than 1%. The other large project was a wind project in 2019, and the council awarded 1.35%, far below the 2.76 that was hypothetically attainable, because they didn't see the need for unmitigated impacts. They were trying to look at the impacts that were not mitigated by industry, and the state is there to help out. Now, large projects, what the good representative is aware of is a very large mine that may come to fruition in Southern County. It's in the order of magnitude of $4 billion. So I look back on the list, on the history of the Industrial Siting Commission. I found one that large, and it was back in 2014. The total cost of that project was $4.79 billion. The award given, the total award given by the Industrial Siting Commission for that very, very large project was a little over $11 million, or 0.23% of the maximum. So as you get into these very big numbers, you don't need to give the full amount, because again, this is unmitigated impacts. And that's why the organization of county commissioners agreed to the stair step. Actually, they brought it forward to us, and the amount goes down for these large projects. So I would recommend that you don't approve this amendment, but that we do approve this bill, that it can go on and continue on to the other chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Heiner. Any other members for their first time? First time? Second time? To the sponsor of the amendment, Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'd like to respond to the comments by the representatives from District 54, 27, and 18. First, with respect to the organization that our county commissioners belong to. Well, we've been told that our county commissioners are all behind this, right? But if you look at the actual sheet and spreadsheet that got prepared by that organization and distributed to all of you, if you look at under House Bill 47, that association says they oppose this bill. It says in black and white they oppose the entire bill. So I don't think looking to the county commissioners for support about the current draft is a strong argument. On the merits of it, we've also been told that this bill is nothing special because prior versions have already passed each chamber. Well, those versions, at least one of them, had a bottom tier of 2%. So it wasn't this, it wasn't 1.5%. So neither of those arguments work. And third, with respect to the comments from the representative from House District 18, 2 points. First, under this amendment, the maximum would be 1.75. If the actual is less than that, you still have to prove your actual, so it's no harm, no foul to make it 1.75. And second, according to a memorandum put out by the agency that administers these impact assistance, if you look at the projects that were done in 2019 and 2020, the average award was 65% of the maximum 2.76, which comes out to 1.79% roughly. So basically this 1.75 that we're going to as our bottom line is about where the average is for the projects that were actually done in 2019 and 2020. So this amendment doesn't hurt anybody. The local authorities will still have to make a showing. They'll have to show that the actual impacts. And for those reasons, please vote aye.
Thank you, Representative Stith. All those in favor of amendment number 1, third reading amendment number 1, House Bill number 47, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. The amendment has not been adopted. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn excused, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kinner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller,
Aye.
O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood,
Aye.
Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Brown, aye to no. Paxton, aye to no. Zwanitzer, Aye to no. Sherwood? Aye to no. Further change, Henderson? Aye to no. Baker? Aye to no. Romero Martinez? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote? Vote is closed. 39 aye, 20 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 47, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 47 has passed the House. Next, House Bill 49.
House Bill 49, sponsored by corporations. Election reporting requirements, an act relating to elections, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
House Bill 49, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Correct. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Ayer. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller.
Aye.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
Aye.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. It's too late. I hit the button. The vote is closed. 45 aye, 14 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 49 has passed the House. Next bill, House Bill 52. Reading Clerk.
House Bill 52, sponsored by corporations. Timeline to prepare and process absentee ballots, an act relating to elections, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
All right, members, there is an amendment. Chief Clerk tells me it's not showing up on the website. You have to go to the amendment portal to see this amendment. The amendment portal to see this amendment. I just want to get some affirmation that people have found access to it. I see a thumbs up. I see a nodding head. As you know, per the rules of the body, amendments have to be available prior to being considered. So I want to make sure that people do have access to it. Seeing that, Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 52, third reading amendment number 1, and ask for your favorable consideration. So as I've been listening to my constituents, the concerns they had on 52 were the fact that we had an opportunity for information to leak out ahead of time about an election. And so a thought that I had on that is, that would be incredibly hard, but possible, I guess. And the only way that I could see it even being possible is if you had the opportunity to have a personal electronic device directly in the area where you're processing those ballots. So what we've come up with here, and I'll read it, it says, no person observing the preparation and processing or performing the preparation and processing of absentee ballots under paragraph II of this subsection shall be allowed to have in their possession any personal electronic device except for a device for medical necessity within 10 feet of the area where the preparation and process is occurring at any time while preparation and process is occurring. And I've talked with the commissioners about this and have, or the clerks, sorry, about this, and have their blessing, and the concept is I don't want it to be that there is none, because I want transparency, 100% transparency, but we also don't want it where people have the opportunity to solicit information that they can bring outside of that counting facility or a counting place. And so this is just kind of a cleanup to put people's mind at ease. Obviously, this is a polarizing concept or situation we're dealing with right now, and this is just a way, again, where the clerks feel that we can give people that understanding that it is definitely a fair and safe operation of how we're counting these absentee ballots. So I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Any member first time? Representative Nyman, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would stand in support of this amendment as well. This in no way restricts anyone's ability to be in that polling place and videoing anything that's going on in there. You just have to stay 10 feet back. This is in regards to the folks that are actually physically handling the ballots, the absentee ballots, inputting those ballots in any way that they would be able to transfer any information. But poll watchers in this situation are more than able to have their phones to video the process, to keep an eye on what's going on. So just for information's sake, on amendment.
Any other member first time? First time, second time, to the sponsor. Members to the sponsor. Representative Harrelson.
Just call for the question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Members, we're voting on third reading amendment number 1, House Bill 52. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment is adopted. House Bill 52, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Ayer. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller.
Aye.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
Aye.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 46 aye, 13 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 52, having received the majority of the votes of the members elected to the House, House Bill 52 has passed the House. Representative Burt, privilege of the floor, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to direct your attention behind you to the gallery. I'd like to recognize Frank Latta, who used to be a former member of this body, as well as a former city councilor for 8 years and a 2-term mayor of Gillette.
Welcome home, Frank. Good to see you. Representative Brown, privilege of the floor, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it's not very often we get people here from Cheyenne, and especially in House District 9, that come to watch over us. But we have a distinguished gentleman that had a very long career in the police and law enforcement area. Mr. Donnie Hyduck is sitting up there, and I'd like to recognize Mr. Hyduck as one of the best constituents a man could ever have, and not only that, one of the best friends a man could ever have. Thank you.
Well, welcome. Thank you for your service to our communities. Any other privileges? Any other privileges? All right, next bill, House Bill 65.
House Bill 65, sponsored by Representative Bear. County tax protest filing date. An act relating to ad valorem taxation being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
House Bill 65, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Ayer. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller.
Aye.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
Aye.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Swanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 65 has passed the House. Next bill, 86.
House Bill 86, sponsored by Blockchain. Genetic Data Privacy Amendments. An act relating to genetic data privacy being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
House Bill 86, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn excused. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Ayer. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. 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 Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller.
Aye.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
Aye.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Swanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 excused.
House Bill 86, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 86 has passed the House. Next, House Bill 87.
House Bill 87, sponsored by Blockchain. Insurance Investment Amendments. An act relating to insurance being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
House Bill 87, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks, Bear, Blackburn excused, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller,
Aye.
O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote, are there any changes? Newsom, no to aye. Oakley, no to aye. Burkhart, aye to no. Further changes? Clausen, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 34 aye, 25 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 87, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 87 has passed the House. Next item for us is House Joint Resolution 5.
House Joint Resolution 5, sponsored by Capital Financing, Permanent Mineral Trust Fund Investments and Distributions. A joint resolution proposing to amend the Wyoming Constitution to modify and modernize the Wyoming Permanent Mineral Trust Fund, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We do have an amendment. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Joint Resolution 5 and ask for favorable consideration. This amendment puts some sideboards on the use of these funds to try to make sure that the golden goose doesn't get spoiled. So the first thing it does is it keeps the 5% spending policy subject to changes by both bodies of the state legislature. That can be increased in 0.5% increments with 3/4 of both chambers supporting that. And if and each year, it makes this clear, it doesn't reset each year on an upwards increase. On a downwards increase, you can go back in higher increments, but an upwards increase, it's in 0.5% increments. And then if the earning funds hits about $3.5 billion, that's 7 times 5% of the 5-year rolling average market value of the permanent fund after annual distributions from the separate earnings fund. That tips back into the permanent fund if you hit $3.5 billion. And then it also says that not more than $1 billion can be used on political subdivisions. That's pretty generous, but it just puts some sideboards there. So we're just trying to build some sideboards. This has been the golden goose for our state. And the way it's worded right now, I'm not comfortable with it. Just having it up to statute, I just think we're going to get spending policies that aren't sustainable. The idea that the legislature through statute is going to make the corpus whole. I mean, who on earth is going to make sure that happens? I mean, the Supreme Court has ruled that basically only 90 people in the state have standing to sue based on violations of the state constitution. So there's really going to be no enforcement mechanism there. We really need to get some sideboards, and that sideboard is that 3/4 vote on the spending policy. So I'm not comfortable with it where it's at right now, and let's pass this amendment and put some sideboards on make sure we don't spoil the golden goose. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member first time? Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, ladies and gentlemen, but let's just talk about the concept in general. So what we're trying to do is go from an income account investment policy to a one fund policy. That's the purpose. And why are we doing that? We're doing that because right now, particularly take our common school account and take the other 8 or 9 other accounts that are similar to it across the United States, it is the lowest returning fund of all of them, at the bottom. We want to change that. We want, the opportunity cost here is $2 billion in the permanent rental fund over the last 18 years. If we, and I think you have to remember is, we've already done all of these things in statute. So what we're doing in the Constitution is really kind of conforming to what we did in our statutes. In other words, in statute, we use the definition of income to be both capital gains and unrealized capital gains. And this body passed that last year. So we're not doing anything we haven't already done. We also, last year, adopted what we call the Amended Meyer rule. And the Amended Meyer rule means that we're going to refund any losses. So if the stock market goes down, the value of the corpus goes below what we put in it, then we can repay it over time. So as we build back up more income. So what this does is basically authorize what we've already done, and it puts it in the Constitution. But the problem with the amendment is there are lots and lots of good ideas in this amendment, actually. Let's just talk about them. If you go to the middle of the page, it says the state treasurer will invest this new permanent fund at a portfolio level. That is exactly right. That is what we want him to do. But the question is, why put it in the Constitution? Why are you talking about a portfolio level in the Constitution? The Constitution, it basically is a guidepost. It should be general and it should be broad enough to have flexibility. So, and now we're being specific about it. And what's the rationale for that? I would suggest to you, there's no rationale to it. If you read the language, basically, we invest the money as directed by the legislature. That's what the current constitutional language says, and that's how we should leave it. And then we direct how it's expended, and we tell the state treasurer how to do it, and that's what we do. Let's go, and where else, anywhere, do we require a 3/4 vote of the legislature to do anything? So why in the world, and if we want to do that, we should do that in statute. We really should. Not in the Constitution, which is a sacred document that you shouldn't amend unless it's absolutely eternally essential. And the terms we put in the Constitution should be generic. They should be broad and all-encompassing, so that we, the legislature, have the flexibility to do what we want to do. And that's what it currently says. So we're adding more requirements in the Constitution when we should be doing in statute, because that's what the Constitution directs us to do. So let's talk about can't exceed 7 times the 5-year rolling average. Well, what is that number? And why would we put 7 times the 5-year rolling average in the Constitution? So that's the number, by the way, that the Investment Funds Committee suggests is the right number. So we agree with that number. The question is, why would you put it in the Constitution? Because we may want to change it. We may want to be 6 times. It may want to be 8 times. It kind of depends on our financial needs. And probably the hardest part is locking in the 5%. Why would we do that? So in the turn of the century, inflation was 8.5%. That means that we wouldn't have enough to cover inflation with our income. In the 1980s, inflation was 7.1%. But more importantly, prime interest rates were 14.5%, and the borrowing rate was 20%. How many ranchers lost their ranches because they had variable interest rates and they couldn't cover their bills? And yet we're locking in, we're saying we can't do more than 5%. We can't pay it out. So we're locking a number in time, not learning from experience of what we know is not a safe number. Really, I mean, if we're going to put it in the Constitution, we ought to have 2% over prime, or some number that's variable, that's based upon the fluctuations in the interest rates that we have to pay. I mean, right now, we're at a 7.5% probably over the last 6 months. And so the point is, the Constitution should be general. All good ideas in here. And in fact, if we get this far, when the legislation comes through next year that Cap Finn will put together, these could be the exact same numbers and probably will be very similar to these numbers. And I'm just suggesting that, and I agree with those numbers, I'm just suggesting that it shouldn't be in the Constitution because we just don't know enough to know what we don't know and to lock in the numbers. So on and against the amendment.
Members, for your first time representing Western, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise against this amendment for a simple reason. The whole point we are creating this earnings fund is to generate maximum revenue. Because of the constitutional constrictions on how the corpus can be invested, we've left a lot of money on the table over the decades. The whole point of this earnings fund is to generate maximum returns so we can get those returns going forward. And if we cap the amount of money we can put in this earnings fund, that ultimately leaves money on the table over time that we could be realizing for the state of Wyoming. So on and against.
Representative Larson, first time, and then Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a little background, as this was given to us as an interim topic in capital finance. And as we slowly over the last 10 years moved or made an effort to get a greater return on our permanent funds through investments, this has been repeatedly talked about and supported. And as we've contemplated and anticipated how we put this into place so that we can put all of these funds into an earnings account to have a greater return, we've always anticipated that we're going to have to come back in and amend the Constitution and correct the definition on, or correct that term that the Constitution says on interest and put in their earnings, realized gains and capital gains and those sort of things. So we try to do that in here. But as we've done that, we assigned, who are we? We want to make sure we do it right. And so how are other states doing it? And so we task our staff to look at other states that had similar funds, permanent mineral trust funds doing similar things that we're doing, and to come back and make with some recommendations. So we looked at the state to the south of us, we looked at the land of enchantment, we looked at the beehive state, and we looked at the potato state, all very similar. All of them come back and it says, as you adjust your Constitution, make sure that you don't get too prescriptive. The only state that has this limit, like we see in this amendment, of 5% is the potato state. And what they say is it can't exceed 4%, nothing else. And they don't allow the legislature to do anything. That's all done with their land board, which is like our SLIB. And that 4% is not defined, and they use it very liberally. Can be 4% of this month, 4% of 20 years, 4% of 3 months. And they do that regularly. And so they have flexibility, but they're the only one that have that in there. I will share with you, so as we contemplate what the framers of our state constitution were thinking of, they done this. And they put this cap on the indebtedness of the municipalities. And one component of that I worked on a couple of years ago is they put this cap of 4% on sewer. And you'll recall a couple of years ago, we had a constitutional amendment on that because our municipalities are saying, we can't take care of our sewer issues because the definition of sewer back in the late 1800s and the definition of sewer now didn't contemplate stormwater, didn't count, much of the sewer infrastructure and water treatment that we have today. And they can't meet the needs. They need a little more flexibility. So we tried to get rid of that 4%, and we're unsuccessful. It is not easy to go in there and change that number. And I would really encourage you to avoid getting too prescriptive in the Constitution. Now, in this amendment, probably one of the biggest things that concerns me is it allows, I don't like the language of this, but there's this escalator, the ability to escalate and you can do it by 0.5% a year with 3/4, which is of the elected officials. But once it's up, there's no mechanism in this amendment to take it back down. Read it and look at it. It gives you the mechanism to raise it. But once it's there, there's not a mechanism to take it back down. And so I think that that's a flaw in this amendment that is really critical. So I would just encourage you to avoid this and this amendment and the one on the next one. There's a lot of work gone into this process, and before we can really achieve the goals that we've been working for as a body on both sides of the total legislature to bring generational income from these savings we have, we're going to have to deal with some of these limitations that our Constitution currently has. So please resist this amendment and please support this House joint resolution.
Thank you. Representative Bear, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So a lot of explanations have been going on here as to what we're talking about. I think both sides, those who are for this amendment, those who are against, agree that the resolutions are really a good idea. There's some good things in there. There's some bad things in there too. And I'll start by talking about the fact that we're broadening the definition in our Constitution as to what we're able to pull off of our permanent fund and then use as expenditures. We're broadening that. In fact, if you look at the resolution on page 3, line 18 and 19, you can see we're talking about unrealized gains now. So we're talking about the paper value of our investments. So this is a bit risky. We're allowing ourselves to take that out of our permanent funds, which have been the golden goose. They've really helped. Right now, we're over 20% of our revenues are coming off of these funds. And we're going to broaden the definition of what we can take off of there. So this amendment actually puts some restrictions on what we can spend and allows, as the resolution does, to put money back into that account. So we're really looking at just restricting what we're able to do. And I want to bring back to your minds the Hathaway Scholarship. Our predecessors brought up a great program. And they thought about it, and they put money away. I also would tell you that this Permanent Mineral Trust Fund, our predecessors were very intelligent to put this money away that now we're able to use to supplant the income that we don't have from other streams. So let's not destroy that entirely. Let's be careful as we open it up. And that's what this resolution does, on and for the resolution, the amendment, sorry.
Thank you. Representative Washut, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like some clarification from the chairman of our Appropriations Committee when he made a comment about we're not doing anything in this resolution that we haven't already done, that we passed in statute last year. That sounds an awful lot like now we're trying to amend the Constitution to comport with statutory changes that we made last year. I'd like to have that clarified.
Any other member, first time? First time. Representative Sweeney and then Chairman Harshman. Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'd on and against the amendment. I draw your attention to of the current bill to page 3, line 12, section 2. And so basically what that does is that's going to be the ballot language. And now I'll draw your attention to the amendment. And all of these changes and quote unquote sideboards, the reason I'm speaking against this is the more confusing you can make the explanation on the ballot to the voters, the more risk you have that the constitutional amendment won't go through, in my opinion. Having worked on a similar process last session. And I believe the amendment changes enough in the language to confuse the voters. We have the benefit here in the legislature to discuss these things, and so we're a little more knowledgeable. The voters really, when they go to the polls and see these things, a lot of them are confused and don't really have all the information they need. So I just think I agree with the chairman of appropriations that we can put these tools in place, as he said, but not be so prescriptive in the Constitution. And I just think we're monkeying around with the wrong device at this point in time. I urge a no vote.
Thank you. Chairman Harshman, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate the amendment to give us an opportunity to visit about this. It's really important. And I think a couple things, I think the last two speakers, both from Casper, brought up points, but I think starting with the last one first on just the ballot language, and you'll find that on section 2, and that's on page 3 of the joint resolution. I think it's really important, if you haven't read the ballot language, it tells you exactly what this is going to do, right? And so it talks about number 1, and I think this is what the other member from Casper asked, what did you do in the statute? And the first thing it says on the ballot language, it says that, it says monies in the PMTF can be invested and loaned to political subdivisions. There's some, in the Constitution, it talks about, yes, and if we have losses, the legislature will figure out how those are repaid, because we're going to repay losses with this amendment to the corpus. So it talks about that in the first thing in the ballot language. And then it talks about would also require that earnings, and that's the real question that Representative from Casper, what did we do last year? We changed all throughout the statute and all these permanent funds throughout. Remember, the bill was very thick. Interest, income, all these different words were out there, and we're trying to define this all as earnings. That's really what the constitutional amendment does. So if couple really important things. So if you go to the language on page 2, line 16, the new language, and goes through line 20, it talks about and affirms that this corpus is inviolate and that we will make up losses to the corpus. We don't talk about that now. And then it says we'll make it up in a manner prescribed by us. Some of our neighbors do it in a 10-year deal, right? They say, hey, if they have losses to the corpus, realized losses, they'll make it up. So I think that's really important. The other part is this earnings piece on line 23 on page 2. And we define now in statute what earnings are.
It's really important. And this deal of unrealized gains that the representative from Campbell County talked about, it's been a debate since the start of the Permanent Mill Trust Fund. What are you supposed to do with realized and unrealized gains? Are realized gains part of the corpus? How much of it should be part of the corpus? So we're going to try to keep working through this and figure this out. It's been sitting around there for about 50 years now. So we're continuing this work. So on to this current amendment, third reading amendment number 1. I just think to put in the Constitution, we all know what the 2/3 vote is like, right? It's us and a state in the Southeast are the only ones in the country. Western democracies, republics, democratic republics do not favor supermajorities. And to put a 3/4 vote limit to change a spending policy, I think it goes way too far. And I just think you don't want that in our Constitution. We don't want it. And so I think this is really a good, I guess the last thing I'll just say this, and this is really a good joint resolution. It's been worked on and talked about for years. And I'm just going to explain it like this. If you go to your data book, you're going to see the big corpus and you're going to see the reserve account side by side. Now we're going to try to put them all in one little bigger account. And then we're going to have one line that's really an accounting issue. And I learned that from the good CPA who's on the television screen today. And we're going to have a bigger account now with an accounting line, and it's all going to be invested for the maximum growth of that corpus. So this thing will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it truly will be the really golden gift that minerals has given this state. And I tell you, when, and Governor Hathaway, can I say his name? And the governor had the scholarships named after her. And I was a part of that. I was a proponent of naming that. But he's the guy that brought us the severance tax on minerals. Was not very popular at the time. And so when we came to name this scholarship after him, I'm kind of going off the amendment, Mr. Speaker, but a little privilege here, a little grace, but an adopted boy who volunteered for another 25 missions over Nazi Europe, comes back, self-educated, becomes governor. What better success story to name a scholarship for kids after? Well, he's the guy, and many of the other leaders served with one of their sons who passed away that set this whole permanent thing up. And I tell you, the last 20 years or so, speaker from my district, from Casper, Tempest was his name, really was a leader in this. And we've really come a long ways. $2 billion when I started. Now it's almost $9 billion. It'll be $18 billion before long. It's going to the power of compounding. And so this is really a good joint resolution. Encourage your support, and I encourage you to vote no on this amendment. And let's move this forward. I think it's good ballot language for the voters. You read that, it's clear. And we're going to strengthen what we have and keep getting better and better. So again, appreciate the debate, appreciate the bringer of the amendment, because I think it's so important to talk about these issues. And as we keep moving this state forward. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any other member first time? First time. And the next speaker will be reminded not to use any props. Any other member first time? First time, second time. Second time, Representative Larson, Lloyd.
Folks, I think I was a little bit remiss in my first comments to point out that I think when we get this in place, there's got to be sideboards. I do not disagree with that. We establish a spending policy, now we do that as a body. We have to control and manage and do that. I think that's critically important. It may look really similar to what we see in this amendment. I do not disagree. Just shouldn't be in the Constitution. That should be in statute. We could define that and do that there. I think that the very inappropriate use of a piece of paper that we saw that I think is helpful for me making this explanation is this is a pretend piece of paper. When we have all of those funds in that, we have that line drawn there to the good representative from up in the land of coal. Where should we attribute the income that's derived from realized and unrealized gains? As we move to this model, what we're protecting is the inviolate corpus, just for number's sakes. If that's at $8 billion, we protect that. That's inviolate. It stays at 8% plus whatever we grow it through the constitutional 1.5%, and it grows. But the earnings that this produces should be attributed, both realized and unrealized, to the other side of the line, so that we can determine what our spending policy is going to be. And it's important for us to determine when we pay for those losses, because what we've been forced to do in the past that's kind of bit us in the left cheek a little bit is we've been forced to sell some of these investments prematurely to make up losses and not been able to realize the investment potential that they had. And so putting this all together, in us determining by our actions last year when to pay all of that back, and it's in here as well, that we have a little more flexibility to capitalize on all of those investments for the greater good and not have to sell them prematurely. So again, would ask for a no vote on the amendment, and please support this solution.
Thank you. Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Think of your savings account. You put money in that savings account. That's what we have. Now the administration creates some policy, inflation goes crazy. The value of that money inside of your savings account is losing value compared to what it used to be. So if we value our balance in our savings account today, and we go through a 5-year period, and we lose value because of the inflation, and yet we gain value because the stocks have improved, those types of things, we got some capital gains, we may just barely cover our losses as far as inflation is concerned. So we've got to be careful when we start taking our money out of this account that is paying for a quarter of our business as a state. These limitations that are in this amendment do just that. On and for the amendment.
Any other member, first time, or second time, Chairman Nicholas, second time, before the sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the point that was just made is exactly right. The problem is we've been using our fund as a savings account, and we don't get the benefit of inflation. You know, I remember up through 2000, you could make 5.5% in a money market account, but that wasn't enough. And that may happen again. What we're trying to do is during the down times as well as the good times to maximize our return. So that is exactly right, and that's what we need to do. But let me just, what's interesting about this, because most of us know where this amendment came from, and I'm afraid that this issue is turning into one between personalities and more of a political one than looking at what we're doing. I'll tell you this is when we will work with our elected official to make sure that all that is addressed in this amendment will be in the statutes, because that's what we're going to do. And I can just give you my promise that that's what we're going to do. And almost every one of the items in here will be addressed in statute. And if it's not, we won't bring it to let you guys decide. What we need to do, though, is get the constitutional amendment passed by 2/3 vote so we can make more money for the state and help take care of us and our kids in the future. So please support on against the amendment and for the bill.
Thank you. Other members for their second time before the sponsor, to the sponsor, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good debate, good debate. I would like to push back on some of these comments, and I think the debate really crystallized why we need this amendment to the constitutional amendment. And I think, I want to make sure to make this outside of the chairman of the appropriations because it's true for all of us. None of us are going to be here forever. And it's just a biological reality. I mean, outside of the political reality. So when he says, well, it's going to be in statute correctly, and it's going to be permanently that way, and he's going to be sure that he's going to be a steward of that and make sure it remains that way. Look, I mean, the cemeteries are full of indispensable men. The reality is none of us are going to be here forever. And to promise that, well, we're going to have these protections in statute, it goes to what my seatmate, the member from House District 36 said, probably one of the most important bills of the last session were those adjustments in state statute to the permanent funds that passed. And we had to be reminded on what actually happened last year in that statutory change. Because it's not that difficult if you get enough powerful people in the legislature. You really only need 2 or 3 powerful people and you can pass a statute. It's just not that difficult. And but that's why you put these protections in the Constitution. And so I think that guarantee and that repetition over and over again crystallized why we actually need it, because there's no way you can have a guarantee that the statute is going to protect forever on this. The only way to guarantee once you make the change is to put that in the Constitution. Now, to correct some of the statements made that I don't agree with, first of all, other states do this. Utah has a 4% constitutional statutory policy in their constitution. It's lower than the 5%. New Mexico has a 5%. And I would like to consider the state of Wyoming way more fiscally conservative. I think that we would certainly like to be on the same page on that respect. There are 2 states that have these guarantees in their state constitution, Utah and New Mexico, and they have much lower permanent funds, okay? Now, in terms of the statement that, well, this constitutional amendment doesn't deal with how decreases in the statutory policy are handled, we specifically remain silent on that. And again, when you're silent on an issue, and I think this is a issue in terms of constitutional interpretation that maybe is growing in the Appropriations Committee, because the chairman, we had this issue on the 1-year residency thing. We kind of got in that debate, and I think we're doing it again. I mean, when you're silent, when the Constitution is silent, statute can supersede and can clarify the direction the legislature wants to go. So we're silent on how a decrease in the statutory policy is handled. Consciously, we wanted to have that control in the Constitution on the increases, put that 3/4 cap on the increases and 0.5% increments. But on decreases, let's have a statutory mechanism where we can decrease higher than that 0.5%, because if it's at 6%, I'd like the legislature to be able to knock that back down to 4.5%, 5%, and not be subject to 0.5% increments. So we'll clarify that by statute. So again, let's button up our constitutional interpretation here. It's silent on the question of decreases, and that is where I do think that procedure is where we can clarify that over statute, how we do that. But again, there's a very good reason why we put this in the Constitution. I want to say one other thing too on the member from District 58. I think we gotta let's not be cynical on the people of the state of Wyoming. They want us to get this right. And I think the fact that the ballot language maybe has a little bit of clarification there, it's 4 lines that are added on that page 4, line 2 amendment. I think it'll clarify it more, that there's going to be some limits on how much the SPA can increase, and we're going to have some protections in there. I think it makes it a lot more likely to pass. Granted, I think by the time we're done, we might have 6 constitutional amendments on the ballot, and I'm doubtful any of them will pass, because last time we only had 1 and it didn't pass because not enough people filled it out because it was too long, the ballot language. But I mentioned that yesterday. It's kind of a different question, but I think that I think it's important for us to clarify these questions in the Constitution and to put a strong statutory policy that will protect the golden goose in our state. So I urge an aye vote on this amendment. Thank you. On this amendment to the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. So members, we are voting on third reading, amendment number 1, House Joint Resolution 5. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is not adopted. House Joint Resolution 5, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the joint resolution pass? As a reminder, requires a 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn excused, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, excused, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller,
Aye.
O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood,
Aye.
Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Worf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 44 aye, 14 no, 2 excused.
By the affirmative vote of the majority of the members of the 2/3 of the members elected to the House, House Joint Resolution 5 has passed the House. All right, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Thank you. Privileges of the floor. Representative Western.
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor.
Please.
Members, in our South Gallery, we've got some folks from the Community College District there in Sheridan County, so if we could just stand up real quick. We've got Aaron Kilbride and Deb Wentland. They are outstanding. They are leaders in our community. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Thank you. Representative Duncan.
Privilege of the floor, Speaker.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the West Gallery, of my good friend from Jackson, Jessica Chambers. She's on the town council, so we have quite the odd friendship, being on opposite sides. So please welcome my friend Jessica.
Welcome. Representative Nyman, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to also give a shout out for one of my local residents, Sundance town council member and businessman from my part of the country, Mr. Joe Wilson. Thank you, Joe, for
Welcome.
coming down here.
Welcome. Welcome, folks from the Northeast and the very West and from the Community College District of Sheridan County, Johnson and Campbell. Anyone else? Any other privileges? Committee announcements? Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 8, Transportation, will meet in about 15 minutes to consider House Bill 44, Mobile Home and Vehicle Titles, House Bill 64, Vehicle Service Contracts, Senate File 35, Electric Vehicle Charging Stations, and time permitting, Senate File 18, County Road Maintenance Funds, and Senate File 45, Military Department Report.
Chairman Flitner.
Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, will meet in about 15 minutes. In E5, we will discuss Senate File 6, Aquatic Invasive Species Inspection Enforcement.
Thank you. Chairman Hirschman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 3 will meet upon adjournment in a place to be determined, because there's other events in our usual meeting, room 3, but we'll announce that room and we'll continue work on House Bill 147.
Thank you. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Appropriations will meet in 10 minutes to continue Senate File 66, 67, and 2, and House Bill 109 in room 301. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., we will meet in room 301 to finish up what we didn't get done today, and also do Senate File 57, 58, 59, and 98, and any other re-referrals.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Any other announcements? The House will stand in recess until 2 p.m.